Good morning, everybody. Before we officially begin with Cassie, I just wanted to offer a word of welcome. My name is Andy Lichtenwolner. I'm the director of the Office of Formation and Discipleship here in the Archdiocese. And I've been here 5 months, so I'm learning a lot. I grew up in North Metro Atlanta, so it's been a real blessing to be back home and to serve the church in this way. So on behalf of Archbishop Gregory and our two auxiliaries, Bishop Conzen and Bishop Ned, welcome to the Chancery offices here in the Archdiocese, and thank you especially for coming out Saturday morning with probably not enough advance notice, but thank you for making the time in your schedules. We're really excited about this trip because it's more than a trip. Cassie's going to talk about that today, but thank you for saying yes to be part of this pilgrimage for World Youth Day, and we hope this day is going to be really helpful to you and a step, an important step in preparing for this great pilgrimage. So Cassie Cole is here from JMJ Youth Pilgrimage, and we're really grateful to have her here with us. She flew down for this event from Charleston and has taken time to be with us today to walk through just practical preparation and also spiritual preparation. I also want to welcome Heather Gardner, whom some of you have already met in person. But Heather is our leader for the group, taking over for Catherine Angulo, who was our Associate Director for Youth Ministry. And she left us about a month ago to go up to the University of Notre Dame to work with the university with the McGrath Institute for Church Life. One of her absolute priorities while she was leaving was to make sure that this group was well accounted for and would be well taken care of. And Catherine handpicked Heather to be your leader there on the ground because she knows Heather has great experience and will just be a wonderful leader for you to accompany you in the pilgrimage. And working closely with JMJ Youth Pilgrimage, you all will be in very good hands. Bishop Conzen will also be present for World Youth Day, so he's going to be down there with the bishops who are attending World Youth Day. His hotel will be just a few blocks, actually, kind of south from the hotel where you all will be at, if I understand correctly. You can ask me correctly, but on this Sarah, which is the kind of main strip which you'll be on. So Bishop Conzen is praying for you all and actually hopes that he'll have an opportunity to maybe meet with you before World Youth Day, and then maybe actually during World Youth Day too, if that works out. So we'll continue to kind of look into that. But without further ado, I leave the floor for Cassie.
Okay.
So thanks, Cassie.
Great. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. It's good to meet everybody. I'll try not to stand directly in the projector light. Let's start our morning with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, first of all, we want to thank you for bringing us all safely together today. We thank you for your constant presence in every moment of our lives. Help us to grow in our relationship with you, to know you as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Please fill this day with your inspiration, with your love. Help us to understand what it means to prepare for a pilgrimage, to be part of a pilgrimage, and how we can bring that pilgrimage home with us when we return. We ask you to guide our discussion, our questions, so that everybody does feel prepared for this special pilgrimage to World Youth Day. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So this would not be a youth-related event if we didn't start with a warm-up and icebreaker. So take a sip of your drink, and then if everybody will come to the front of the room, please. Our icebreaker is called This versus That. Oh no, everybody, not just the kids. Pilgrimages are for everyone, not just the youth. So everyone come up front. I know you're going to be in the spotlight a bit. So the way that this warm-up or icebreaker goes is that I'm going to give you two options, and you have to pick one, right? So you can pick this or you can pick that, and you'll go to the side of the room of the thing that you've chosen. So to warm us up, warm weather or cold weather? Which do you prefer? Warm weather to my left, cold weather to my right. This is why we live in the South, right? Okay, well that was easy. Okay, next one. Who prefers hamburgers and fries? And who would prefer chicken and vegetables? Good, a little more movement. Hamburgers and fries? Chicken and vegetables? Okay. How about time indoors, time outdoors? Indoors, outdoors. Okay, interesting. All right. Who prefers sitting and relaxing or walking and being active? Sitting, relaxing? Okay.
Sit and relax.
Most people are active outdoors, some say, okay.
I'll sit
Okay, good. How about praise worship music versus quiet prayer? Praise worship music, quiet prayer over here. All right, very interesting. You guys can have a seat. Thank you so much. So I hope that we got a little bit of your blood moving, right, before you have to sit for a bit. And there's also a connection between our little experiment and preparing you for World Youth Day. Because I hope what you saw is that we don't all agree all the time, right? We all have different preferences, different ways that we experience the world, different ways that we prefer to spend time. And even though sometimes there might be a clear majority, on no single question did everybody go to the same side. And so now imagine that you had to make decisions for this entire group, or for even more people than this. You wouldn't be able to please everybody all the time. And that's the role that your group leaders have been in as they've been designing this pilgrimage. And it's going to be the position that they're in as we continue on this pilgrimage when you're in Panama. They will constantly, your chaperones, your group leader, will be making decisions for you on the go. You'll have a guide that's there to help you and advise, and so they together will be deciding what activities the group will go to for the day, when and where to go eat your meals, and not everybody's going to be happy all at the same time. So when you encounter those moments and you're thinking like, why are we stopping for lunch now? I'm not even hungry, or oh my gosh, I'm starving. Why can't we stop for lunch? Try to remember, think back, oh, didn't Cassie do that little warm up, this versus that? I know that will not be your connection, but if you'll think back, not everybody can be pleased all the time, but there are going to be other opportunities down the road where you will get the chance to be a bit more comfortable. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into your itinerary and talk about this whole World Youth Day experience that we have coming up. We'll cover all of the practical items first, and then we'll jump into our catechesis at the end of the morning. So for your itinerary, this slide looks awfully blank, doesn't it? That's because I want to direct you to your group website. This is, if you don't already have it at home, you haven't used it before, it is printed on your handouts, jmjyouth.com/Atlanta. The password is JMJYouth2017. We didn't want to update it on people in the middle and have them lose access to their websites. So that is your private website for your group, and it does have your whole itinerary on there. It has your flights, and that's what we are going to be using this morning as your reference. So, oh, it closed on me. Well, let's try this again. So on your website, this is where we have posted the high-level view of your itinerary to show you what you'll be doing day to day. So this is what your website looks like. You got a little screenshot of it on your paperwork, on your handouts today. So here on the left, we have your daily itinerary. This is based on the foundational itinerary for World Youth Day. So on Monday the 21st, your group will arrive into Panama City, and based on your flight schedule, you get in at about 3:15 in the afternoon. When you arrive at the airport, your group will be met by your private JMJ Youth World Youth Day guide. So that means that you're not sharing your guide with any other groups. They are there for your service throughout the entire pilgrimage, and we'll talk about what that looks like more in just a moment. Your guide will meet you. They will ride the bus with you to take you to your lodging at the Hotel Riu. which is technically a 4-star hotel. It used to be 5 stars, and they quit serving dinner. So apparently that means they have to be 4 stars. So it is very, very nice, very, very comfortable, which is not the norm for World Youth Day. So we hope that you enjoy your very, very nice hotel. Your guide will help you get checked in. You'll have a moment to get settled in your rooms. And you'll usually have a group meeting that afternoon or evening to prepare for World Youth Day. That's when your guide will be bringing all of your registration kit materials, which is your World Youth Day backpack. It's stuffed full of goodies. And you'll start to talk about exactly what the schedule looks like for the week ahead. World Youth Day has many, many, many different activities during the week that you can choose from, and they don't publish that schedule until days before World Youth Day. Sometimes they don't ever officially publish that schedule. That's what happened in Krakow. But once they make those events known, their locations, their times, that's when you get to choose exactly what every day looks like in detail. So that night you'll meet as a group. You'll make some plans for at least the next day, if not the rest of the week. Then Tuesday morning, this is when your World Youth Day experience really kicks off. In the morning, your guide will take you on a tour of Panama City. It is a walking tour. And during that time, you're not only going to be learning about Panama City, your guide will also be training you on really important things about how to move through the city, both how to move through crowds safely, how to stay together as a group easily, what to do if somebody does get separated from the group. They'll be teaching you landmarks along the way so that if you were to get separated, you would know roughly where you are, how to get to transportation, how to make communication, things like that. So it's not just a tour of the city that is lovely and you get to see wonderful, historic, beautiful churches, but you do also get to have that on-the-ground safety training for moving as a group. That's very important. In the afternoon, World Youth Day kicks off with the opening mass. It's celebrated by the local archbishop. It is the first major event of World Youth Day, and it will be taking place at Cinta Costera, which is right down the street from your hotel, about 4 blocks. That will take the rest of the evening, and you'll return home that night, probably 10 o'clock the earliest. So we want to prepare you for long days. The next few mornings, you'll start the day with catechesis. And when I first heard that years ago, when I was learning about World Youth Day, I thought, oh, that sounds really boring. It's not. So you start out the morning going to a really large venue. Usually they're held traditionally in stadiums. They're going to be in smaller venues this time around. Maybe they're larger churches in downtown Panama City. The English sites have not been set yet. But you start out the morning with praise worship music so that you feel a little more awake after not getting much sleep. Then you'll have an archbishop or a cardinal give a presentation on some topic. And it is a topic specifically aimed at youth. So it's something that you can actually relate to in your lives. And after they give their talk, they're open for questions and answers. It's one of the really unique opportunities that you have to talk directly to a preeminent archbishop or cardinal and ask them absolutely anything that you want. After the question and answer, there's usually a brief break. Then they celebrate Mass for everybody that's there. After Mass, you then have the afternoon free. So that's typically when groups go get lunch together and then choose a youth festival activity or two for the rest of the day. The youth festival, that is that's where you have many, many different activities to choose from. There will be concerts, there will be dance performances, comedians, speakers on different topics. In the past, there have been Hollywood actors that are Catholic who come and talk about their faith and why it's important to them. You could spend more time in Panama City somewhere. It's really up to you as a group what you want to do. And again, your guide will be with you the whole time to support you, help you get to those locations, help you make those decisions. They might tell you they've heard a certain event is going to be very memorable, and they can give you those recommendations. So that's Wednesday. Thursday looks very similar, starts out with catechesis just the same. In the afternoon, you have a little bit of time for those youth festival events, and then in the evening, that's when Pope Francis arrives. So it's really up to your group how you want to greet the Pope. Some people decide that they want to skip the youth festival activities and go line up on the street so that they can be front row when he comes by in the Pope-mobile. That's great, that's what I did in Rio. Other groups decide, no, we want to be at the welcoming ceremony itself. So they go there and they get a good position inside of their zone for the event. So that way they're settled and they know where they're going to be. Other people decide we're loving these youth events for the youth festival, and they go to lots of different events. They show up at the very last minute to the papal welcoming ceremonies. They're at the very back, but they don't care. They're there watching it on the jumbo screen. So it's entirely up to your group how much energy you have that day, what you decide is most important to you. On Friday, again, you start with your last day of catechesis. You have more youth events that afternoon, and in the evening, you have the Way of the Cross. And in the past, it's been celebrated in very different ways. It's totally up to your group if you want to go be present at the Way of the Cross. In past World Youth Days, they haven't announced if they'll do this again. They've simulcast the Stations of the Cross to some of the catechesis centers. That way, if by Friday you're tired of walking and tired of standing and need a bit of a break, you can watch from one of those catechesis centers instead of going to be present. It's completely up to your group what you'd like to do. Again, that's going to be a late night. You'll be home very late. And then Saturday morning, we'll get up bright and early. Typically, the United States schedules a pilgrim mass that morning so that all the American pilgrims can get together. They have not put that on the schedule yet, but we do expect that to be there in the morning, Saturday morning. Then from that mass, the pilgrims leave to start the pilgrim walk. The final vigil site has been changed 3 times in Panama City, and so they have still not officially announced where it's going to be. Presently, they are saying it's going to be by the international airport, which is something like 30 to 40 miles away from central Panama City. Clearly, you will not be walking that far. You'll take public transportation as far out as it goes, and the plan is to have their new metro line completed that goes all the way to the airport, and then you'll walk the extra distance. So you should plan to walk 10 to 15 miles. That's the typical distance of a World Youth Day pilgrim walk. You'll make that pilgrim walk to the vigil site, wherever it is, whether it's Panama Pacifico or this new vigil site that they're talking about. It also may end up right at Cinta Costera, where all the other events have been. Once you get there, for me, it is the most memorable part of World Youth Day, the prayer vigil. First of all, you stake out your camping area because you will be staying there overnight, sleeping under the stars. Once you've set up your camping area, in the evening, they start performances of all different kinds. I can't even describe, they're so different every year. A lot of musicians, dancers, symphonies, choruses. Then the Pope arrives. He leads everybody in prayer and adoration. He gives a speech, a talk to everybody there, and then closes the ceremonies. Adoration continues all night long. So the host will be moved off of the main stage into an adoration tent that you can visit at any time during the night. Around midnight, things start to quiet down, but usually there are a few groups, especially the neo-catechumenal way, I'm going to say that wrong, but their movement, they usually are playing drums all night long. It's just their thing. And so you get what sleep you can out there. Then in the morning, there will be music playing again to start to wake you up. As you wake up, you just get ready and Mass happens right where you are. So the Pope leads the closing Mass in the morning on Sunday morning. He gives his final homily. At the closing of the Mass is when he announces the next World Youth Day, and everybody's always excited and surprised. So even though we have some inklings ahead of time where the next one will be, it's not official until the Pope announces it there. And since Pope Francis likes to throw curveballs, we never really know until the end. After that closing Mass, you'll make the walk back to central Panama City to your hotel, again, using public transportation where it's available. And once you arrive, you have a free evening. It's entirely up to your group what you do. If you are exhausted, great. You can stay at the hotel, you can relax. It is your last full night in Panama City, though, so we'll always encourage you to get out and make the most of it. Go and have a great dinner, enjoy your time walking around, go back to places that have been meaningful to you, and that will be, again, something that your leaders and your guide will set up for you and support. The next morning is when you'll return home on your flights. And again, we have your flight itinerary here on the right side of your webpage that you can keep referring to. Your times shift a little usually. For whatever reason, airlines will change it 3 or 4 minutes. We'll try to make those updates as often as we get them. As it gets closer to time, though, just check on the actual airline's website to see exactly when they have your flight departing. You have all of your flight codes and everything here, and you'll have the official flight confirmation closer to time on your final travel documents. So before I take questions about the itinerary, I want to show you a video. It is here on your website for future reference and to share with anyone who's not here, to give you an overview of what the week really looks like.
World Youth Day officially kicks off Tuesday evening with a mass with the local archbishop. Wednesday morning begins catechesis sessions where pilgrims break up into language groups. The primary focus is a bishop, archbishop, or cardinal giving a catechetical teaching to the youth, along with music and testimonies, followed by a mass. After lunch on Wednesday, there are dozens of cultural festivals, film festivals, and breakout sessions that pilgrims can choose between. Thursday begins with a catechesis until lunch, followed by more cultural festivals that pilgrims can choose to attend. Thursday evening is the welcoming ceremony with the Holy Father. Friday has the final catechesis session with even more cultural festivities in the afternoon, concluding in the evening with the Stations of the Cross with the Holy Father. On Saturday morning, groups prepare for the pilgrimage walk with Mass and breakfast. They are provided with boxes of food and begin to travel to the final vigil site, usually a long walk, somewhere out of town. Walking many miles is an important part of the pilgrimage experience. Saturday evening is the vigil, where the Holy Father joins the pilgrims to give his main address for World Youth Day, usually followed by adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. Everyone spends the night out under the stars and wakes up on Sunday to celebrate the final Mass with the Holy Father. At the end of Mass, the Holy Father will announce the location of the next World Youth Day. After Mass, the pilgrims work their way back to their lodging, often walking the way they came.
And then to give you a little more detail of what to expect for the pilgrim walk.
How and why should you prepare for World Youth Day physically and spiritually? The evening vigil and final Mass on the last 2 days encapsulate the difficulties and the spiritual highs that you may experience. On Saturday morning, you'll make your way to the site of the vigil and the final Mass. This will be a long walk, perhaps 10 miles or more. The walk is done this way on purpose. Classical pilgrimages always involve lots of walking. The Camino, walking to the shrine of Czestochowa, or Our Lady of Guadalupe. This is one of the reasons why you must be physically prepared for World Youth Day. As you approach the site of the evening vigil, you'll exchange a ticket for a box of meals that will likely include lunch and dinner on Saturday, breakfast and lunch for Sunday. You'll have assigned sections, but if you arrive late, your section will probably be full and you'll have to go somewhere in the back where you can find space. Maybe near a large screen, maybe near the bathroom. Once you situate yourself, prepare for a long wait until the vigil begins. When the Holy Father arrives in the evening, there will be great fanfare and celebration. Music, interaction with the young people. The Holy Father will probably drive around in the Popemobile for a while. Then he will make the major address to the youth of the entire week. He will speak to everybody there with a particular message that he wants everyone to receive. Now listen to this message as if he's speaking to you personally, so you can make these changes in your life that he is asking of you. When the Holy Father leaves, the program will probably continue for several hours. Then you will spend the night outside, on the ground, under the stars or the rain, until the morning Mass when the Holy Father returns. He will give another address to the young people at his homily, and after Mass is over, he will announce the location of the next World Youth Day. After he departs, everyone will head for the exit at the same time. Be prepared for long waits to get out of your section and out of the entire area. Hopefully there will be some type of public transit along the way to get you back to the city more quickly, but if not, be prepared for another long walk. So in summary, be prepared for these physical challenges and the spiritual graces that God wishes to give you during the entire World Youth Day. Open your hearts to the grace of God and receive everything that God wants you to have.
Okay. Any questions about your itinerary itself? You guys are quiet this morning. Okay. Let's see if I can fix this.
There are more sandwiches, by the way.
Just a moment. All right. Oh, we have a question. Great.
Just to be clear, does everyone arrive at the airport on their own, or?
Airfare is included in your package, so everybody is arriving together into Panama City. For the airport in Atlanta, It's just hit me what you're really asking. Sorry. Yes, everybody will arrive on their own to the airport and meet there.
Just meet at the gate?
Yeah, yes. Typically you'll meet at ticketing or the gate. It's really up to your group leader, and we'll have more discussions with them to see what they're most comfortable with, and they'll certainly communicate that to you. Usually what groups do is they do meet at the gate, but they'll leave one representative at ticketing as long as possible, just in case anybody has any questions or difficulties. Your group leaders do a lot of work in advance to make sure that everything is exactly correct on your airline tickets so that you don't have any trouble. But just in case, usually we ask somebody to stay out there as long as possible. To preempt future questions related to that, we do recommend that you get to the airport 3 hours in advance. I know that that can seem really far in advance for people, but because we have to make sure that the entire group gets there, that everybody gets checked in with no problems, that everybody gets through security with no problems, and has time to gather at the gate, we do ask for that 3 hours in advance. That way nobody gets left behind or worries that they're gonna miss the plane. You'll save your group leaders some stress and heartache if you go ahead and get there early for them. Any other itinerary questions? Okay, and we will have a set aside time for Q&A at the end of this section as well. Please.
Like the guide, can you tell us about the guide?
Thank you, that's coming up right now. So I do want to tell you more about your JMJ Youth Support and what makes this pilgrimage different than if you were to organize your own pilgrimage to World Youth Day. We provide you with several layers of support. Those that are most visible and most important to you are the three that I'll talk about now. The first are the group leader updates. These are updates sent to your group leaders monthly to prepare them. They're also available on your website. So if you go to your website at the bottom right, there is a button for group leader updates. I think it just says updates. But you are welcome to read through those just to make sure that you've gotten all the same communication as your group leaders, though they should also essentially be reading through their updates and then sending out to you the relevant information so that you don't get bogged down in all the administration that they're having to deal with. Those updates at the current moment are mostly administrative. They've talked about the paperwork that you guys have had to fill out, making sure we get everything correct. Moving forward, they're focused more on preparation, packing tips, what time to get to the airport, getting final travel documents, how to do safety once we get into Panama. And those will be more valuable for you to read as a pilgrim, as a parent. Then we have your guides. So to answer your question, you do have your private JMJ Youth World Youth Day guide. They are your 24/7 assistants for the group. They are staying in the same hotel with you, so they are there for anything that you might need. We train them in country. Some will be from Panama City, or at least the country of Panama. Others we bring in from the United States and a few other countries because of their World Youth Day experience and work they've done with us in the past. We train them in country for a week before World Youth Day. That way they are already intimately familiar with the transportation system, how to get through the city, how to find their way around from really any point in the main part of the city. They've gotten to know all of the different resources that are available, where medical tents are, how to get to hospitals, where the best places to exchange your money will be, where the closest ATMs are, where the best restaurants are. The other important thing about your guides that I can't emphasize enough is that they are a safety resource for you as well. So they're not just a concierge or customer service. They are there to make sure that you are safe and to provide a safety net for you while you're there. So you'll see in our picture that we have these great JMJ Youth flags. You will see them all over World Youth Day. You can't get away from them because we have so many groups out there with them. Your group will have a flag. It is going to be on the tallest flagpole out there. The flag does a few things. Primarily, it marks your group so that you can easily move around together. You don't have to link arms the way that some people do. That's actually very dangerous when moving through crowds. Instead, you just keep your eye on the flag. As long as you can see the flag, you know that you can get to your group. You'll never be lost. If you were to get separated from your group, you can go to any JMJ Youth flag and their guide can assist you. All of our guides have local cell phones, as will your group leader, so that if you get separated, you can go to a guide. They will call your guide and or your group leader to tell them, hey, we have Jack. Jack got separated. We're trying to meet up with you guys. Where are you? Sorry, Jack, you're the first one I met this morning. How can we meet up with you? If they can meet up right away, great. They can reunite Jack, problem solved. If you're at a large event, we understand where you guys are. He'll stay with us. We'll meet up with you at 6 o'clock at this location to reunite him with the group. So that way he's always taken care of and safe. The other important thing about flags, if there were to be some sort of event that made it impossible to use cell phones, if the towers go out because they're completely overloaded and we have any kind of emergency, we have the availability, or the ability rather, to enact our caveman backup plan. And that's where we can send out our messengers, our guides, our office staff to go flag to flag to each group, making sure that we get the right information to those groups. So even though they just look pretty and give people a lot of pride in their group, those flags and your guides are very, very important parts of your safety net. As I mentioned, your guides will have local cell phones, as will your group leader. That enables you to have direct contact with them if you're back home and your child is on this pilgrimage in case of an emergency. We don't want you calling them just to check up on, how did Bobby Sue do today? But if there's an emergency back home, maybe you've had a relative pass or something else has happened, you can call the group leader directly and let them know what's happened. As soon as those phone numbers are assigned, they are posted on your website so that they're available to you directly. We also have, as a resource for you, our office in Panama City. We set up a JMJ Youth office for about a month during World Youth Day to support all of our groups. We will be staffing that office 24/7. To be honest, during Krakow, I think I worked 22-hour days, and even during the 2 hours I would try to sleep, the phone was going off. So we are there to help. Our staff is there. We have a chaplain with us, just in case of pastoral emergency. You never know what you might need, especially for groups who are not traveling with a priest. That priest is available if you desperately need confession or any other sacrament. We also have a staff doctor, which is new this year. You shouldn't need his services because it is so easy to get medical attention at World Youth Day. Your credentials allow you to get free emergency medical treatment at any medical tent and any hospital in the city free of charge. But in case you need a second opinion or something happens where you would like his consultation before going to a hospital, we do have Dr. Aaron Davis, who will be available from our office to come assist. Any questions about the support from JMJ Youth in City? Any other questions about the guides? Okay, excellent. So I'd like to move on to expectations for while you're at World Youth Day. We do want to make sure that you understand that this is not a vacation. And during catechesis, we'll talk about what it means to be on pilgrimage in a spiritual sense. In a physical sense, it means that it's not easy, that there are difficulties. So some of the expectations you should have. You will be in crowds constantly. Panama City is an urban area, much like New York City. And the streets are not great as far as sidewalks go, and yet they're going to have to accommodate probably 300,000 to 500,000 people during the week. And then for the final vigil, we're expecting about 1 million, maybe 1.5 million people for that last weekend. So you will constantly be in crowds. You will always be in a line for something, and you're going to have to do a lot of waiting. Not just waiting in line for things like food in the bathrooms, but waiting on your own group members. When I went to World Youth Day in Rio, that was probably the greatest part of suffering for me, was that I got up and I met the group at the time I was supposed to be there, and I was ready to go, and nobody else was. So we would wait and wait and wait for people constantly, and it taught you how to be patient, it built virtue, and it's certainly an expectation that we want you to have. You can also expect to have late nights and early mornings, if you want to be. The underlined words are the ones that are missing from your handout, in case you didn't pick up on that. Late nights and early mornings. So your wake-up call in the morning will usually be around 6. Groups typically meet about 7 a.m. to walk to catechesis, depending on how far it is from the hotel, which means if you want to shower every day, then you've got to be up at 6. The handout? Yeah, sorry. So your handout is in front of you. You can be filling these out as your reminder. So you'll probably be getting up around 6 every morning, possibly earlier if your group wants to do a prayer meeting before the day starts, up to your group leaders. As we went through the itinerary, you saw every day is packed. There is so much to do, you don't have time to come back to the hotel in the middle of the day. You usually will get back to your hotel 10 o'clock at night at the earliest. The earliest. If there's a big line for the metro and you're riding the metro back from somewhere, or you're just walking in a big crowd on the street, you can't walk very fast in a crowd, you might not be getting home until midnight, and then you've got that 6 a.m. wake-up call again. Plus, you're usually really wired, like after you've maybe done a play at school or been to a concert with a friend, you've had such a great day, your body's not ready to shut down when you get back. So it sometimes takes a while to be able to get to sleep, no matter how tired you are. Then at the vigil, of course, on Saturday night, you're going to have a night of sleeping on the ground. So you might not get very much sleep that night either. This is a very typical setup for what camping looks like for the World Youth Day Vigil. You can also be prepared to walk, walk, and walk. If you didn't pick that up during the videos, let me reinforce it now. You will be walking everywhere. This is the blessing and curse of your lodging. Because you have such a centrally located hotel, it means that public transportation for the most part is useless to you. The public transportation, by the time it gets to a stop near you, the buses, the metros will probably be full of pilgrims who are located outside of the city in the suburbs and had to come in. So by the time a train gets to you, it's packed and there's just not room. So you'll walk places instead of jumping on a metro or a bus. So you should expect to walk about 10 miles every day. Those 10 miles during the week will be a mile here, a mile and a half there. You'll have breaks in between. It's not 10 miles all at once, but it is every single day. And that's what most people tend to not be prepared for. They can do 10 miles the first day, it's a struggle the second day, and by the third day they have swollen ankles and they just think they can't do it, but they do. Then for the vigil, pilgrim walk to the vigil and after the closing mass, that's going to be 10 to 15 miles each way, which means you don't get to stop along the way every mile. You've got to just power through. We want you to be prepared for that. The other thing people don't expect that you should, there will be many last-minute changes and you will have to do a lot of problem solving. World Youth Day essentially is organized chaos. So the host country does the best that they can to create this very organized, well-planned event for about 1 million people. But even their best laid plans, something goes wrong every time. And it's something different at every World Youth Day. So no matter what happens, if a metro line has to go out of service, if they never publish the schedule of events, or maybe you're having trouble finding somewhere to redeem your meal coupons, your guide will be there to help you. Your group leader will be working with that guide to make those decisions. And our office will also be the behind-the-scenes support. So if your guide doesn't already know the answer right away, they're going to be calling us, and that way we can be sending out better and improved information to all of our groups. So those are the moments where, once again, you need to be patient, focus on the joy, and I think your group will be well prepared to know that this was going to happen, this too will pass, and you can move on to focus on the more fun parts of the pilgrimage. So we do want to still remember all of the great parts too. I don't want you to think that this is just going to be a week of trials and tribulations. So you can also expect to have an incredible adventure. I love calling World Youth Day an adventure because you're going to a new place and new places within that city. You're going to be trying new foods. They have really great like Latin American, Central American food there, but they also have a really big Chinese population. So there's really great Chinese food there too. You'll be trying all different kinds of new food. New people literally from around the world. There will be people there from every country in the world, and you have the opportunity to meet and interact with them. They especially love meeting Americans. It's a thing. Everyone looks for the Americans and wants pictures of the Americans. So it's fun to be a little celebrity while you're there. You'll also have all kinds of great stories. So every time something goes wrong, in the moment you might be a little stressed out, like, oh, we're waiting on this bus in the rain forever. And then when you get home, that ends up being the story you tell all the time and laugh about. So you're going to come home with amazing stories and experiences. Fellowship. So this is my picture to help me not be vain and to be very humble. This was on the last day of World Youth Day in Krakow. Again, I had been working in the office 22-hour days. I was exhausted. I think I didn't sleep the night before. This is my friend Rebecca. Rebecca and I were pilgrims together in Rio. And then for Krakow, she came back and was one of our guides. And since it was the last day, we weren't sure if we'd see each other again. She wanted to make sure we got a picture. So this is my example of fellowship, because on this pilgrimage, maybe you know half of the group that's coming from your parish and not the other half. Maybe you don't even really know the people from your parish all that well. You are going to form the tightest bonds. Rebecca and I had never met before when we were pilgrims together. We were in a group made up of individuals from across the country. That group of 40 people formed the tightest bonds. Even though World Youth Day Rio was all the way back in 2013, we're all still in contact. We've gone to each other's weddings. Rebecca and I met up in Spain at the end of the Camino de Santiago. Several came back and were guides for us again. So you're going to form these incredible, intimate friendships that are unlike anything from your day-to-day life, because you had this really special event that you all had together, this special experience. So new friendships are formed, old friendships are strengthened. You also have the opportunity to focus on your purpose in life. And that can seem really big and really heavy, but it's very real. So at World Youth Day, where you get to be surrounded by the universal church and people who are your age, who are going through similar things, who are going through entirely different things in their lives, it really helps to put life itself in perspective and to see where you are at this moment and what it is God's calling you to do now and in the near future, and maybe even long term. Many people have their vocations clarified during World Youth Day. Some are called to religious life, some have gone on to seminary after World Youth Day, and others have it confirmed for them that they're called to married life. So this is a really unique opportunity to reflect and to listen to God's call in your life. And finally, joy. As I mentioned, it's joy and suffering. You will just have the strongest feeling of joy, usually during those difficulties. There will be so many fun things that you get to do, so many new experiences. And again, because you're doing it with new people or strengthening old friendships, it's just unforgettable. This group was in Krakow. There are JMJ Krakow United group, which means they were made up of individuals that hadn't met before. Twos and threes came together. So people who didn't know each other before, they had been rained on most of the week, and they're just having the time of their lives. I got to meet some of them. Really incredible experience. So you will certainly experience joy during World Youth Day. We have a saying at JMJ Youth that I'm sure your guide will teach you once you get there. We say, it's all Pope. It's all part of the pilgrimage experience. So the good things, the bad things, the joys, the sufferings, it's all part of this whole intense pilgrimage experience. It's all part of what you bring home. And during the difficult times, we say, it's all Pope. Like, let go, turn it over. It's all part of the pilgrimage experience. And during the great times, we say that too. Like, this is part of the pilgrimage experience. I just had an unforgettable night. It's all Pope. So we are very excited for you to get to experience that. Before I jump into details about preparation, any questions about those expectations, the sufferings, the joys? Okay. After we go through preparation tips, we are going to get a break and there are snacks. So if you guys can power through, I'll be able to get you moving soon. Preparation. Last of the administrative things, you are required to get a vaccination before going to Panama. All pilgrims attending World Youth Day Panama need proof of immunization against measles to be permitted into Panama. This is new. Typically when you travel to Panama, there's no requirement for Americans. And about a month ago, they made this decision that for World Youth Day, they are going to have this immunization requirement. So this is a new requirement. You do have to have your record with you. And I brought my own as an example. So if you're not sure what a vaccination record should look like, they look a little different depending where you get it from. But roughly, it'll show the dates that you were immunized and the name of the vaccine. So if you need to get a closer look, I'm willing to give you my medical records, no problem. You can get a copy of your own immunization record from your doctor's office. If they don't have it anymore because they don't retain records that long, check with your schools. Usually you filed with your school when you registered. And if they don't have it either, essentially consult a physician. Apparently there's a way for them to test to see if you've had that immunization, and they can certify, or depending on your age, they might just recommend that you get a new measles vaccination. So consult with a physician. As much as we would love to be experts on vaccines, we're just not. So the key is that you do have to have that record with you in your hand, so in your carry-on, when you're traveling to Panama. We're asking then that you go ahead and make a copy and email it to your group leaders. That way they have a digital copy. They'll bring printed copies with them as well so that they can be your backup. It shouldn't be necessary, but we know that the most organized of people can accidentally forget things on the day of travel, and we don't want that to be the problem once you're already at the airport. So please send a copy to your group leaders so that they can be that backup plan for you. Questions about the vaccination requirement? And please, at any time, you can always just raise your hand to ask a question, but I want to make sure you have time for that.
Is there any sort of like time frame, like
How recently?
how
I don't-
recent or how long before the trip?
I don't think so. My impression is that since the measles vaccine is a once in a lifetime thing, or mine has 2 dates, so I don't know if mine came in 2 phases, that's all that's required to see that you have had it ever. So, ever.
If she got it when she was 5. it's
Right,
okay.
exactly, yeah. So mine I got when I was 1, and a second treatment again when I was like 7, so yeah, that should be fine. And for most Americans, it was part of the MMR vaccine, if that sounds more familiar, measles, mumps, rubella. So just to make sure you know, those are the same thing. All right. So now we get into more of the interesting part of preparations. This is physical preparation. What can you be doing now to make sure that you have the best pilgrimage experience? Walking, especially for adults that are accompanying the group, but for young people as well. Make sure that you can work up to more than 15 miles at a time. I know it's hard to find the time to go do that, but make sure that you do it once or twice at least before you come to World Youth Day. Even if you're typically very active, like maybe you play basketball a lot or any other sport, there's something different about walking, especially if you have a weight on your back. So you want to make sure that really your feet and your knees are in good shape to do that. You should also practice navigating public transportation. So my recommendation is to plan a day with your friends or your parents where you go do something in Atlanta and you only travel by MARTA. A lot of people, even though their cities have public transportation, don't frequently use it. But by practicing navigating public transportation, you'll feel a lot more confident following your guide and group leader around the city. And if you were to get separated, you'll be a lot less nervous because you're very comfortable with that system and knowing how your chaperone's going to come back to you. So we recommend getting comfortable with public transportation. And with packing, our tip here is to pack lightly. Pack lightly, pack lightly, pack lightly. It will do everybody a favor. You can easily fit, everything that you need into one carry-on. One carry-on. So I brought with me, an example for you. So this is my backpack. You don't have to get a technical hiking backpack. I do use mine for backcountry backpacking. It can just be, it doesn't have to have a frame or anything, but about this size, a little bit bigger is okay. You don't need those giant backpacks that you see people take to Europe. That's way too much. It will be a burden to you. So a little backpack like this can fit everything you need. I did 2.5 weeks in Europe in this. I've done every World Youth Day in bags of this size. Plus, if you bring a sleeping bag, you attach it to the bottom. So we don't expect you to fit a sleeping bag in here. But we do have a recommended packing list, so I'm not going to read that to you now. But everything on the recommended packing list can fit into a bag of this size. Okay? It is a challenge, so I recommend starting at least a week ahead of time. Pack your bag once, see what doesn't fit, reassess, pack it again. And the earlier that you practice packing, the better, because once you get everything into your bag, you'll know your bag's weight, and you can start practicing walking with that weight on your back. Ladies, my recommendation is that you don't do more than 15 pounds. Even 15 pounds can be a pretty big challenge once you're walking far. Gentlemen, you might be able to carry more. But even 5 pounds on your back gets heavy really fast when you have to walk far with it. We do have, as I mentioned, a packing list available. It is on your website. Switch over. It's linked in 2 places. So here are your group leader updates that I mentioned before. We have frequently asked questions about World Youth Day here. And then if you look down below the forms that you've already filled out or that you're refilling out today, your packing list is right here. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, we show you the temperature you can expect. We have another link to the video we'll watch in just a moment. All of your recommended items over here to the left, and then some other friendly packing tips for you over on the right. Please.
So are they going to be taking their backpack everywhere they go every time they leave the hotel?
Wonderful question. I'm so glad you asked. No, you do not need to take your full backpack with you every time you leave the hotel. Your hotel room is very secure, so you can leave things behind. You can bring your own day bag to carry around, like a much smaller, flimsy type backpack, or even a small purse if you want. I recommend backpacks. Or you can just empty your backpack and carry it around lighter with the things that you need for the day. Your registration kit at Panama will be a backpack. It is a good one to use as a day pack, but just as a warning, they're made very, very cheaply. And for most people, by day 3, they start to tear apart. So you don't want to count on the registration kit to be your only backpack. So you don't want to bring a suitcase and then count on a backpack from them because it will tear apart. So yes, you can leave things behind in your hotel each day and just take what you need for the day. Some snacks, water, your credentials, a notebook, your phone to use as a camera, but to keep the service off otherwise. Then for the vigil, when you do make that walk out to the vigil site, you'll need to pack a little more because you're out for the whole night. So in that case, you'll be bringing your overnight things as well. But again, you can leave extra clothes behind. Anything else that might have weighed you down, you can leave behind in the hotel room. Great question, thank you. Any others? Please.
So are we going to be wearing matching t-shirts?
That is up to your group leader, I'm not sure. Do you know, Heather?
I've been told we're getting 2. That we have to alternate.
To swap out?
Yeah, there will be 2 t-shirts, but I think it's up to you
Which one you wear what day?
in terms of which one you wear what day, and then if you want to, kind of wear a different day.
Yeah.
Different shirts too.
And then I don't know if it's counted in that too, but you will get a t-shirt with your registration kit as well. Though fair warning on those, they don't ask for your t-shirt size at registration. I think everyone just gets a large, and you see how that goes. I know mine from Rio I can't really wear, but so you might end up with 2 or 3 shirts in that case. But yeah, up to your group leader. Great question. All right, so that's just the example of what the packing list looks like. And then also among these videos, there's another link where it says click here for the packing list. It's there as well. We have this tutorial that our company president, Steve, recorded back, I think it was after World Youth Day Sydney. It's back when our company was called Youth in Europe, so you'll have to ignore that part on the screen. Even though it's an older packing tutorial and we did one more recently, it really is the best. So it answers most people's questions about packing. And you can rewatch it when it comes time for you to do your packing, but I still think it's a big help in advance as well.
Hi, I'm Steve Carrickett, and I'm going to give some packing tips today.
So one update for Panama from the video is money. So in Panama, they spend US dollars. You don't have to worry about any conversions, just bring whatever cash you're going to use. Also, these days we use credit cards for just about everything, and that's true in Panama City as well. Unless you're going to be shopping from a street vendor or something like that, you can use a credit or a debit card very, very easily there. You do still want to check with your bank though to see if they charge a foreign transaction fee. If they're charging a foreign transaction fee, then basically you're paying extra, like an extra tax on everything you're buying, and there's no reason to do that. Just bring US dollars. You don't have to worry about a conversion. But a lot of cards, one of their promotions is that they have no foreign transaction fee. So if that's the case, then it's perfectly fine to bring that card and swipe it as you need it. You should bring some emergency cash though, just in case a fraud warning or something comes up on your card. You don't want to not be able to buy your lunch that day because of that. Actually, with your schedule, you'll have lunch provided every day, but a souvenir. You don't want to worry about that fraud warning when you're trying to buy a postcard. Electrical outlets, you're also fine using your normal plugs. You don't need an adapter or a converter. In your hotel, you can just plug in as you would. That said, ladies, don't bring your hair straightener or your curling iron. I know it's so hard and it's a challenge to our humility, but don't even worry about doing your hair. I have really naturally curly, frizzy hair, and during World Youth Day, it air dries, and that's what it looks like. It goes in a ponytail. You can put on a bandana, put on a headband. It's gonna be fine. Everybody's gonna look the exact same. Nobody's gonna come out with nice curls or perfectly straightened hair. That's just not the way it looks. So don't worry about bringing those kinds of electronics. We do recommend, now that cell phones are part of our everyday way of life, we do understand that you're probably going to have your smartphone with you. That's perfectly fine. We recommend bringing an a spare battery, because your phone will drain quickly. So this one, if you want a good recommendation, the brand is, it's made in China, but I pronounce it in Spanish, Puridea, P-U-R-I-D-E-A. It was, I think, $15. I took it hiking in Peru, and it gave me 2.5 full charges off of this one little guy. It's fairly lightweight. It's about the same as an iPhone. And it's a great backup tool. Now, while you have your phones there, we recommend that you keep them in airplane mode so that you're not being charged any data or minutes. You don't have a reason to use your phone while you're down there, but we understand that now we depend on it as an emergency lifeline. So you can make sure that it will work in Panama ahead of time, and then just turn off your service. That way, if there is an emergency, you can take it out of airplane mode, you can call home, call your guide, whatever you need to do. But in the meantime, you're not wasting money on data or minutes, and you're not tempted to be texting your friends. Your texts from your friends back home aren't coming through. You really can focus on being present in Panama and not updating Snapchat or Instagram or whatever. So that's our recommendation there. You do have Wi-Fi in the hotel. So at the end of the day, you can turn on the Wi-Fi, use Skype to call home, or WhatsApp. Actually, I use that one a lot more probably. If your parents don't have WhatsApp on their phones, it's a good thing to have them download ahead of time. That way you can do free calls to each other on the Wi-Fi. But again, we want you to focus on being present in Panama, and keeping your service off during the day is a really great way to do that. So you still have your phone for cameras. I take notes on mine for things, so if during catechesis you want to take notes, great. But your battery will run down really quickly, so I strongly, strongly recommend bringing a spare battery. That way it still is a good emergency backup for you. If you're out of power, you no longer have your emergency lifeline. Any other packing practical questions? All right. Oops, let's see if I have forgotten to cover anything before our break. Nope, just open Q&A. So, well, it's open Q&A while I'm fussing with this. Oh, please, in the back.
Just a real minor thing, the emergency blanket.
Yes.
Foil pad, is that something you really want the kids to all have?
It's okay if they don't bring it, but as we were talking about before the meeting, they're really cheap. I think you can buy a pack of 5 on Amazon for 10 bucks.
Yeah, I found them for like $25 for,
Yeah, it sounds like your leaders might just buy a bulk pack to keep for the group. So as I kind of mentioned before, I'm a backpacker, and I'm not exactly ultralight, but I'm a very light backpacker. And so for me, I strongly, strongly recommend those emergency blankets because they give you a lot of warmth without weight. You especially can put them underneath your body on the float, and that way it reflects your body heat back to you, and it just keeps you naturally warm at night. You don't get hot, it just keeps you from losing your body heat to the ground or to your float. They're also good if you do end up putting it on top of you. Same thing, you're keeping your body heat in, but it also acts as a guard against rain and against dew in the morning. So on actually Rio and Krakow overnight when I slept out, woke up in the morning and I was not wet, but the people around me had had dew sink into them and they were getting chilly from the moisture. So I do love those emergency blankets. They're so light, it's so easy to toss one in. In fact, I usually travel with one at all times. Go ahead.
So with the wrap, that's the thing you're supposed to sleep in.
Mm-hmm.
How do they blow those up?
You just blow them up with your mouth because one, you have all the time in the world. So as you're just hanging out with your friends, you sit there. But typically, the ones you can get that are $3 or $4, they're pretty thin. They blow up to maybe this thick. And so it might take 20 breaths to blow it up. It's not very difficult. The one I took with me, again, both to Rio and Krakow, it finally died after Krakow. It actually blew up pretty thick, so that one took me a while, but it was really comfortable. I got a solid night's sleep. It had a built-in pillow. So it's really up to you, but you can think about your breath power. Mine was Walmart, and I think it cost me $6. So I was big spending on that one. And if you're really interested, I can send out a link after the fact to that one that I love. I especially do love because it wasn't exactly a built-in pillow, but it sort of went up and got fatter at the head area. And so I didn't have to pack a separate inflatable pillow, and I slept very, very comfortably. So I was very sad when that one finally died. Any others?
Had to land another $6 for that.
Yeah, ooh, I know. I know. Well, and it was pink, and now they just make them in white. But so if you get tempted to pack a second bag to check, here is my friendly advice. Don't. One, because baggage really does get lost, especially during World Youth Day. All the flights are packed. If anything goes wrong, bags get lost right away. And they don't always get back to you within a couple days. So if I'm traveling here to Oklahoma, I lose my bag, it'll probably get there later the same day. But when you're going to another country and they have so many different issues going on, it doesn't happen. When Steve was joking and said your bags might end up in Africa, that really happened. We had groups that were going to Europe and somehow their bags were finally found 2 months later and they had gone to a country in Africa. So that's of course a worst case scenario, but it pays to not check a bag. The other thing, if you do insist on checking a bag, make it another backpack. And that's because rolling your bag down the street, the sidewalks are not very good in Panama City. And not only does it make it hard to move through a crowd when you're dragging a bag behind you, it also is just going to be obnoxious for you because it's going to be bumping and bopping all over the place. And when you're the 1 or 2 people in the group that did check bags and no one else did, you become a penance for the group because now everybody has to wait on you at baggage claim. Everybody has to wait on you when you're checking in because you've got to check your bag. So please don't do it. Trust me, you can get it into the backpack. Okay, so that was my admonition about light packing. Yeah, any other questions before we take our snack break? All right, you guys have earned it. Get up, move around, get a snack. There are cookies, more Chick-fil-A. What I recommend for both guys and gals would be the hiking style pants that are shorts, or rather they're pants with a zipper so you can zip off into shorts. Those are really, really helpful. You'll find most of the time that the pants are loose enough they're actually quite comfortable all day. You don't really need to zip them off. They protect you from the sun, which actually keeps your legs pretty cool. But if you are sweltering, you can unzip to shorts, and when you go to a church, you can put the bottoms back on. Those also have the advantage, typically, of being the wicking material, the synthetic material that also dries very quickly. So they're really easy to wash one pair in the sink at night, leave them out to dry, and then the next day they'll be clean for you again. So zip-off shorts are really helpful. I've had questions about footwear. So what I'm wearing, these little wimpy flats, don't wear something like this. Your feet will ache, and no matter how young you are, your back will hurt after a couple of days. Same thing with flip-flops. It's very, very tempting. I did flip-flops for a day in Rio, and I regretted it. My feet got disgustingly dirty, first of all. I stepped in mystery street water, which was gross. But then, of course, it ended up making my back and legs hurt. So sneakers are the number one recommendation. A really good pair of newish but broken in would be ideal. So shoes you've had maybe a month or two would be great. If you have an old comfy pair, that's fine too. We just wouldn't want you to wear something that's so worn out that the soles are very thin, because that essentially won't give you any cushion and will end up hurting your back. Again, also it's very bad for your knees. Or the sandals I would recommend are the Chaco style shoes that you could hike in, or maybe people wear rafting. I don't know how to better describe those, but those do have the right kind of cushion. They stay put on your foot. They let your foot move well. So if you're used to wearing that kind of thing, that's perfectly fine. Again, just avoid flip-flops and then really thin-soled shoes of any kind. You want that cushion. A great question I had was, what if the shoe gets really wet, the sneakers, what do you do about that? Do you bring a second pair? You don't need to bring a second pair of sneakers. I would just pack extra socks. So if your shoes do get soaked at one point in time, switching out your socks is actually going to be the best solution. That's what's going to keep your foot dry and help you prevent blisters, more than actually needing a whole new dry pair of shoes. The other question I had was about water. There will be water stations at all major events and along the Pilgrim Walk route. They have told us that they're going to do a combination of water filling stations and bottled water. So you do want to bring with you a refillable water bottle or a water bladder. I like the water bladders the best. One, because when they're empty, they're perfectly flat. So they're just a lot easier to carry around. And two, because they slide into your backpack, you keep the tube out and you don't have to constantly be hauling a bottle out and trying to reach for it. But if you've got a water bottle at home, you don't need to go out and buy a bladder. It's perfectly fine to carry a bottle with you and refill it. The reason that they're doing a combination of bottles and filling stations, they don't want the waste of bottles for everybody, because it just becomes an enormous amount of trash. They can't process recycling very well. But if they do all filling stations, this is a cultural moment for you. A lot of other countries, because of their own water systems, don't trust that water is clean unless it comes in a bottle. So if they were to do filling stations everywhere, a lot of pilgrims would not drink water because they would see it as dirty or not safe to drink. So they'll have both. Those filling stations will be clean, filtered, drinkable, potable water. In your hotel, we specifically asked, can we drink the water from the faucets? I had been drinking it all week and I was perfectly fine. It tasted great to me. And they said, no, don't drink from the faucets. So my official advice is no, don't refill your bottles from the hotel. They do give you one big bottle of water every day for your room. So you'll have that waiting for you at the end of the night. You can share it with your roommates. It's not enough to get your full water allowance for the day, but it's something. So officially, don't use the faucets in your hotel, but if it's an emergency and you do, I didn't have any trouble. Maybe I have an iron stomach, I don't know. But restaurants do serve filtered water, so you're fine with that. And smaller, like little shack-type restaurants, sort of the equivalent of our food trucks, those will only serve you bottled water. So if their water's not clean to drink, they won't serve it to you. So those are my quick Q&A answers. It also was pointed out to me that I'm so sorry, I didn't give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves. Not so much to me, but really more to each other. So we can start our fellowship now. You don't have to stand up or give fun facts about yourself or anything, but we will go really quickly around the room, and if you'll just say your name and whether you are a parent or if you're a pilgrim and going on the trip. That's really, oh, and I guess which group you're from. So your name, what group you're from, and if you're going on the pilgrimage or not. So if you'll start out for me over here.
I'm Jackie Bowling. I'm a mom from Holy Spirit.
Thanks.
I'm Jack Bowling. Holy Spirit, I'm going on a trip.
Thank you.
I'm Doris Coleman, I'm a mom, and my son's at Marist.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Friel. I work at Marist, and I will be going on a trip.
Great, thanks. All right, you want to take over?
I'm
Right.
DC.
Yeah.
I'm going on a trip and I'm from Marist.
Thanks.
I'm Claire
It's important that you're there. Thank you.
Dorothy Burns, I work at Marist, I'm going on the trip.
Great. Thanks, Dorothy.
And I'm Kristen Gibbs, I'm a parent, not
I'm Hadley Dare from Marist, and I will be going.
Great.
I'm Sarah, I go to the Holy Spirit and I'm going on the trip.
Great.
I'm Lillian and I'm from Holy Spirit and I'm going on the trip.
I'm Nolan, I'm from Holy Spirit, and I will be going on the trip.
I'm Watson, I'm in the Holy Spirit corner.
Okay, great. All right, and then gentlemen at the back, you introduced yourselves. I know Andy did. Benny, did you get to be introduced?
What? Go for it. Well, I'm Benedict, and I work with the Archdiocese, and I'm not going on the trip, but I did graduate from Holy Spirit.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. So the second half of our time together is going to be catechesis. So we're looking at the spiritual preparation side of things now that we've done the physical preparation side of things. So once again, we're going to start with an activity to get you guys up a little bit. So the first thing I need you to do, I'm sure everyone has their phones. If you'll grab your phone for me, go to the alarm clock or your timer, whichever is easiest, and set a timer or an alarm to go off in 1 minute. And once you have it set, stand up for me, please. So a pilgrimage, and if you want to follow along on your handouts, again, they have fill in the blanks for you. So a pilgrimage is a journey that a pilgrim makes, a person makes, to a sacred place for the purpose of venerating it or to ask for heavenly aid, and ultimately to come to know God better. So an example of a pilgrimage could be going to the Holy Land. It could be going to Rome, going to see these sacred places. And you might think, Panama City, that's not a sacred place. But it's a sacred place by our very presence there. You're going to sacred places like churches while you're there, but World Youth Day, the event, turns the entire city into a sacred place. We're not venerating Panama City by going there, but we are going to ask for heavenly aid. So the purpose of making this trip is that we're going to say, God, we need this special time with you. We want you to reach into our lives. We want you to show us what you would have us do, how you would have us live. And we're giving you this time. And the ultimate goal is to come to know God better, to deepen that relationship and let it affect our lives. So in the earliest centuries, the earliest Christians, and mind you, pilgrimages do reach beyond the Christian tradition, but for early Christians, they would make these pilgrimages to very far off lands, going with very little. They would take, like we've talked about, only what they could carry on their backs. They would leave home, they would walk the entire way, sometimes hundreds of miles, and along the way they would beg for food, stop and work to be able to have food, and hope that they could make it to these special places. So we're not quite doing that. We do get to go in much more modern comfort, but we are doing the same thing, and we're still embracing the same pilgrim spirit. So you'll be leaving your homes, you'll be going to a foreign land that does not have the same comforts as home. Yes, you do have a very nice hotel, but it's still not home. Even though you'll see McDonald's on the corner and KFC next door, it's still not home. And you're doing this, again, with that purpose of coming to know God better. So every pilgrimage does include elements of sacrifice. We talked about some of those examples for World Youth Day. These opportunities for sacrifice are everywhere around you. Some of them you can avoid, and others you have no choice but to embrace. In each circumstance, what you're being asked is to practice some self-denial for a greater good and to reach your ultimate goal. God bless you. So every time that you patiently wait for a group member to show up, or you give up wearing makeup so that you can hurry up and get there to meet your group, you are denying yourself for the good of others and so that you can reach this ultimate goal of your pilgrimage. So on your handout sheets, there's a little, a line for you to fill in of saying what sacrifices you would make. So we talked about some of those examples. And I want you to actually think, and I hope you have a pen. If you don't, I only have like 2 to share. But write down what sacrifices you yourself expect to make. I have one purple pen to lend if someone needs a pen. Yeah. Anyone else? Purple? Okay. So we talked about some different examples. I put this picture here to be one of your examples. So if you're having a hard time thinking of something, maybe you just love sleeping on the ground with minimal covers, but if not, that's one sacrifice you can expect to make. And then of those sacrifices you're writing down, the sacrifices you're anticipating, take a moment to think about which one's going to be the most difficult for you. Will it be hardest to not get to eat whenever you want? Will it be hardest to not sleep very much? Who's brave and will throw out one that's going to be most difficult for them? Sure, shout it out. The walking? All right, good. I'm glad that we talked about that a lot today. I can see the fear in your eyes now. What other ones? What are y'all thinking? Yeah, shout it on out. Patience. I already told you that was mine, yeah. Anyone else want to share theirs? Sleep. I'm a 9-hour-a-night kind of gal. It's tough. Yeah. Re-wearing clothes, yep. I hear ya. Yeah, so the crowds, yeah, definitely. And that it can be shocking at first, so that certainly will be tough for a lot of people. Thank you for sharing those. I'm glad that the first half of the presentation got through, that you know some of those things to expect, and that you're thinking now about the fact that it will be difficult for you, which will make it somewhat easier in the moment. And as we talked about, it is all part of that pilgrimage experience. So even though we have these opportunities for sacrifice, they are driving us forward toward that ultimate goal. And we literally could not get there without them. We cannot experience World Youth Day without crowds and losing sleep and re-wearing clothes, because you'd have to have a giant bag otherwise, and without being patient and walking a lot. We also have, in every pilgrimage experience, every pilgrimage, we have hope. This is what's really driving that pilgrimage experience. Imagine you're in the 2nd century and you're leaving home with only what you can carry on your back and clearly not enough food for the months of walking ahead. You have to have hope about what you're going to encounter at the end, or you would never do it. You would never leave home. The hope that we find in these pilgrimage experiences, first of all, we find it in living in the present. When you take that opportunity to turn off your cell phones so that you're not communicating with your friends back home on a daily basis, when you focus on the day's events and being present and having conversations with the people around you, you really are living in the present. And that seems like a simple thing, but you experience life in a dramatically different way in that moment. You really see life for what it is. It's almost like you can step outside of yourself and see your life from a higher perspective, almost like I think of the Earthrise picture that the astronauts took looking back down at Earth. Here we live on Earth every day. We know what Earth is like, but it took those astronauts being in outer space and looking back for us to really understand what our world looks like in a different way. And that's what living in the present during World Youth Day will show you. Even though you're living entirely in the present, you are still progressing toward that ultimate goal. So you are still future focused as you move along through your pilgrimage. And the ultimate goal isn't a single place like it would be if you were going to the Holy Land or to Rome. Here, that final destination is the prayer vigil and the closing mass. So all of the activities of the week of World Youth Day are leading up to those events. And they are very dramatic events. I got to take this photograph at World Youth Day Krakow. I was fortunate enough to be seated right here on the side by the Pope. And I was most excited because I thought, great, I get to be on the big stage at the vigil. How cool. And actually, it was very neat to be near Pope Francis. What was very sad about it, though, was that this picture I took during adoration, the way the stage was set up, I was essentially seated here. You can imagine that the tabernacle is right where the screen was because it was about that large. Because of where I was seated and the way the tabernacle was built, when they opened it up to expose Christ in the Eucharist, I couldn't see him. I couldn't see the Eucharist. And adoration is such a special thing for us as Catholics, and it is, the Eucharist itself is the source and summit of our faith, and here we're adoring Christ in the Eucharist at the vigil of World Youth Day, and I didn't get to see him. So it was very sad at first. But then I had a really special moment where, even though I was adoring Christ in my heart and not getting to adore him with my eyes, I had no choice but to look at Pope Francis because he's what was in my eye line. This is what I was seeing. I got to see Christ reflected in our Holy Father. And it reminded me very deeply of exactly who Pope Francis is. He's Christ's vicar on earth. We're supposed to see Jesus when we look at him. And so I got to see what I call the sunshine, S-O-N, shine, right? So Jesus' sunshine on Pope Francis. And that became a really special opportunity during adoration. And that's an example of how all of the talks during the week, all the experiences you have during the week can draw you to a new and different experience of your faith. How many times have I gone to adoration before? I've been to World Youth Day before, and still God revealed something really special to me, and Christ reached out to me in a really special way that could only happen in that World Youth Day moment. So those opportunities are there for you, and they're especially at their height during that prayer vigil and the closing Mass the next morning. And just like all the sacrifices you make, that experience of hope is also part of the pilgrimage experience.
We are going to do at least one, if not two more gatherings. And so if I could see Brian and Kristen after this to kind of look at some dates. But I'll get my email and cell phone out, so if y'all have any questions or think of anything, just hit me up with that, because, hey, this is all about your experience and lead you to Christ. I'm excited to drop with you. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Any other final questions? Please.
What do they do for security as far as, rats and stuff?
Yeah, I'll do an initial response and then hand it over to Cassie. So I used to work for the Bishops' Conference, and I actually was down in Panama in April with the team to kind of look at security issues with the U.S. Embassy. They take security very seriously for these World Youth Day events, and the Bishops' Conference, our U.S. Bishops' Conference, works very closely with the U.S. Embassy as well, because Panama's had a close relationship with the United States. I think security-wise, there are a lot of things being done, and we have kind of available connections there, even unlike some other countries. But it's always something that's looked at very closely. We're going to have a presence. Hopefully, I think they're still planning to either have U.S. Embassy presence at the Bishop's Hotel, which will be close by our hotel. They have international security and national security kind of helping, even around the borders of the country. Because it's such a large event, obviously there are practical things that you always want to take into account when it comes to international travel. But they really work hard. They're working very closely, step by step, with the government there, the U.S. government, to make this as safe an event as possible. Cassie, I don't know if you have more information.
To build on the answer, so that was wonderful. Thank you. The thing to keep in mind is that this is a major international event that's larger than the Olympics. And you can take into account the type of security that the Olympics receives and then multiply that. So it is receiving the full attention of military, intelligence, both the United States, Panama, and their surrounding neighbors. Costa Rica is participating in Days in the Diocese. They're doing some security efforts as well. So it is highly, highly protected from a governmental perspective. On a ground level view, Everyone that participates in World Youth Day has to register through the official World Youth Day system. This is the information that you had to give us with your passport numbers, countries, place of birth. That has been enhanced for this World Youth Day in that we do have to submit all of those details to the World Youth Day Committee themselves. This is where I don't understand how international intelligence works, but somehow they are taking all the information and doing some kind of background security check for all of those people who are registering to attend. That's why we had to give place of birth and things like that. So it even has that level of scrutiny for everybody who's applying, I assume to check watch list type things. Then when you're at World Youth Day, you receive your registration kits that we pick up for you that contain your credentials. Credentials are required to access every single event. If you don't have that credential, you do not get into these secured areas. It's that simple. Which is what we have to always remind pilgrims, and like Steve said in his packing video, especially the group leaders, the chaperones, because they'll want to collect people's credentials so we don't lose them, but then they might. If you lose the credential, we can't get you a new one. You just get the one, and that's what gets you into events. So they do secure it in that kind of a capacity as well. And then part of what our guides do with your groups in their practical safety training is they also teach things like when you are entering an event or a building, before we go in as a group, we pick a meetup area if anything happens. When we enter a building, we identify our exits first, and if anything happens, we meet at our meeting spot. If there's an emergency happening in real time, what do? We shelter in place, wait till the area is clear and safe, and then we meet at our meeting place. Then we go back to our hotel, we report to the office, and things like that. So we also have those safety and security measures in place. Any other questions about security, safety? I have to limit myself because I could go on forever. It's very, very important to me. So I'm happy to provide other details afterward if you have any more questions.
Yeah, great question. And so we will look for 1 or 2 more dates before the actual World Youth Day pilgrimage to see if we can kind of gather together again to prepare and take some next steps further. Any other last questions before?
Cassie, do you have your contact info on here for us? An email address or anything?
You know what? I have some business cards that I can hand to you. But if you go to your website, just in case you misplaced a card or what I'll tell you in a moment, at the bottom of your website, it has our office email address and phone number right there for you. So again, that website is a great hub for you for anything you need. If you want to reach me directly, my email is Cassie, C-A-S-S-I-E, at jmjyouth.com. It's that simple.
And we can send that out again too. And then Heather is going to be a great point of contact.
Yeah, and really for anything practical day-to-day, Heather, Andy, Benny, they're going to be your best points of contact. But then if they need to escalate something to us, they will.
Right. So today is kind of the passing of the baton day to have.
Yeah.
Yay!
Well, and you can always, you're welcome to call the office and we'll love to give you what information we can. But the information we give will end up being more broad from the office because we have about 40 groups going to this World Youth Day and they're all doing something a little different. So we can of course look up your files on your group and tell you your itinerary, your flights, whatever you need. But if you ask things like, are we eating t-shirts? Well, we don't know. We don't know what your group has decided to do. Or are we having other meetings? Well, we don't know. We don't know what your group has decided to do. So your group leaders are the best first contact. And then we can be there as backup for anything you need.
Great. Thanks, Cassie. So we'll be in touch with you soon.
Okay, thank you everyone
Thanks,
again so
everybody.
much for having me. I
God
appreciate
bless.
it. Good to meet y'all.